From the Allseason broadcast studio, it's What's Treading, brought to you by Apex.
Hello and welcome to What's Treading with Tire Review. My name is David, and on today's show, we are speaking with Chris Hahn. He is the Senior Product and Channel Marketing Manager for Kumho Tire. Let's get to the interview. Chris, it's great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of What's Treading. I want to dive right in here. So in Kumho Tire's research, I know that you have seen that it can be confusing even for, the sales associate standing behind the counter at a tire dealership to explain the difference between an all-season tire and an all-weather tire. And, anecdotally, I've seen this. It's confusing in the marketplace because those terms are so similar. So can you help me understand how to best explain to a customer coming into a tire dealership, how do you explain the difference between these two types of tires?
Well, David, I think the most basic and easiest way to remember it is that an all-weather tire has a three-peak mountain snowflake designation. That'd be the simplest way. But before getting into the all-weather segment, I'd actually like to kind of touch base on a little bit more information about all-season tires in general and how consumers and dealers, retailers kind of approach that segment. So the first thing to know is that we think that many consumers think all-season actually means all weather, right? I mean, it's in the name, all seasons. The tire should perform in every season that I'm driving in, which includes, snow, rain, in dry weather. But yes, a lot of all season tires do provide, decent performance throughout all seasons, but they're not necessarily meant for severe weather conditions. So a lot of all-season tires have pretty decent tread life warranties because that's basically a key need for majority of the consumers out there. But in order to gain tread life, the tire may sacrifice grip in cold weather. So the idea that they do well in snow because of the all-season name might be a little bit misleading for consumers.
Sure.
So you basically got two key areas here. We are having to make trade-offs. So wet traction in order to get winter traction to get more tread life. But all-season tires, are still a good option for consumers in areas that, don't dip below, let's say 45 degrees, where they don't experience, extreme weather, like I mentioned, heavy rain, snow, icy roads. But getting into all-weather tires, past several years, there have been advancements in technology that have led to what is being thought of as a new segment in the tire industry. And these tires are being deemed as all-weather tires. It's a new category for the USTMA in the last few years, and it actually represents the fastest growing tread type in the United States. But again, what's notably different between all season and all weather tires is that all weather tires do have that three-peak mountain snowflake designation. They're relatively newer in the market and are designed to offer more comprehensive performance across a broader range of weather conditions compared to all season tires. And they combine the best attributes of both all season and winter products.
Got it. I mean, I think that's very clear when you see that three-peak mountain snowflake designation. That's a great way to differentiate, hey, you're looking at an all-weather versus an all-season tire. So thank you for that. I'm also glad that you brought up trade-offs. But before we get there, I do want to mention one of Kumho's products, specifically the Soless 4S HA32 tire. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because, recently you've begun referring to this tire as a next generation all-season tire, but it was introduced late last year as an all-weather tire. So I want to get some clarity here. has this tire changed in any way? Have the attributes changed, or is this just a different designation on your end?
So, well, when we first introduced this tire back in January, we actually did launch it as an all-weather. But we did learn a few things after the launch of the product. We took a look at the top states for where all-weather tires were being sold, and there were actually some interesting findings. Based on the USTMA data from 2023, we saw that a lot of all-weather tires were actually being sold in where you probably wouldn't think that an all-weather product is necessary. So places like Texas and Florida. But what may be happening here is that it's a reflection of the overall tire sales volume in those specific states. We also spoke to a lot of our retailers, consumers, and we actually heard that many consumers use the terms all season and all weather interchangeably. They think basically that it means the same thing.
Sure.
And since in this category, it's already a little difficult to get most consumers to have discussions about their tires. That was an extra layer of information that they weren't really engaging in. Plus, because the all-weather designation is due to the three-peak mountain snowflake, for people who lived in areas where there wasn't heavy snow, it was a little bit of a detractor. So we also found that even a lot of store associates weren't familiar and didn't know the difference between all season and all weather. And they already have a ton of information that they have to keep on their minds, multiple brands, different types of products. So it's after listening to a lot of the feedback and knowing that all weather tires are actually the next generation of an all season technology, we decided to amend our message to basically better suit the needs we were seeing from consumers and our sales associates.
Man, I love to hear that. This evolved from you listening to your customers, listening to tire dealers, listening to the end user, and figuring out the best way to present that. So I think that's fantastic.
Presented from the Allseason broadcast studio at Babcock's Media.
Now, getting back to some of the trade-offs, I know you started to get into that, and I want to dive a little deeper. So when a tire manufacturer like Kumho Tire is designing, whether it be an all-season or an all-weather tire, what are some of the trade-offs that you're going to see between those two segments, and how do they where does one kind of shine a little bit better than the other?
So all-season tires are great. They work very well for many consumers out there. But it's important to know that they are designed to perform for a wide variety of needs, right? So there's a broader range of performance features that are necessary for all-season tires. So when you're developing tires, there's always going to be certain trade-offs that you have to make. So, for example, sometimes you need to sacrifice wet weather traction in order to gain winter traction, or in order to gain tread life, the tire may sacrifice grip in winter. I should also add that you see trade-offs in performance characteristics in all types of tires, not just all season. But technology continues to evolve, and these technologies are improving tire performance across the board, with trade-offs being a little bit more minimal. In the case of the Soless 4S HA32, it has a formulation for the compound using the latest technologies that Kumho has to help provide better grip on all types of road conditions. It also has a tread pattern with wide angled grooves to help evacuate water, which helps driving in the rain. And then there's the actual shape of the tire, which actually creates a large contact patch with the road to help enhance traction.
Fantastic.
These are a few of the areas where advancements in technology have created opportunities to really enhance the performance of the tires, and is part of why we're calling this a next generation all-season tire.
I see. And that contact patch, to your point, it makes a big difference, of course. That is, how much of the tread at any one time is connected to the road there. And of course, you have more of that, you're going to have more traction. So of course, that makes a lot of sense in this kind of next generation all season or all weather, however you want to designate that. It makes a lot of sense for that tire to have that attribute. Chris, I want to go back to something that you had mentioned before, where you were seeing where the HA32 had some interesting sales in different parts of the country. I wanted to ask, how is this tire being received since you have released it? Have you seen anything, surprising, any surprising trends out there?
Well, I think because of the way consumers perceive all-weather tires and really just thinking they're the same as all seasons, what we see in the USTMA sales data is as to where all-weather tires are sold is that they follow basically where the overall tire sales volume is. So if you think about it from that perspective, I really wouldn't say there's anything surprising.
Gotcha. No, I mean, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. Now, if we can transition for a moment, of course, it's getting colder out. It's time to, make those maintenance checks. And so I'm curious from your perspective, if you have any maintenance tips that you can give our audience for, specifically the all-weather or all-season segments.
Essentially, we would advise tire dealers and customers to follow good maintenance practices, such as checking tire tread, tire pressures, and doing that frequently, basically monthly, keeping pressures at vehicle spec, and keeping up with the alignment, and at least every 12 months and 10,000 miles. One question we do get, though, is about rotating this specific product. All season tires normally can be rotated easily in different patterns. But since the 4S HA32 is a directional tire, it needs to be rotated a little bit differently from front axle to rear axle rotation with balancing consistently, basically every 5,000 miles.
I see. So you're saying to probably avoid that kind of X pattern that you see a lot of times, where you would take the front left tire and move it to the back right position because of the directional pattern in the tire. If you reverse it, it's not going to perform as you might expect.
Correct.
Excellent. Well, Chris, thank you so much. This has been really eye-opening for me. There continues to be confusion in these segments, and like we said, it's for good reason. It's because the terms are so similar. But I think conversations like this happening, I think it really, really does go a long way to helping people understand what those differences are, what these different segments are good for, where they really shine. And so I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, a big thank you to Chris for having this conversation with us, helping us understand the attributes that are really important in all-season tires and the attributes that are really important in all-weather tires. Now, one of the big takeaways I think that I personally had from this conversation is seeing a manufacturer listen to the marketplace, listen to its customers, listen to that end user, and make adjustments and changes on their end based on what they're hearing. I think that is so impressive. It's great to see. I love to see it. Thank you very much for joining us. Take care.